Ready to roll? Welcome everyone to another installment of Alaska Outdoor Alliance's Lunch and Learn series, where we have cool conversations with cooler people doing the coolest projects, and discussing various issues of interest, contemporary issues and whatnot. So thanks for being here today. My name is Lee Hart, and I am the Executive Director of AOA, and we are the voice of Alaska's $2.2 billion outdoor recreation economy. And today we're talking with a coalition of people that are interested in helping create a dream trail, Alaska's first long trail. And they will tell you all about it. I don't want to be a spoiler on that, but I think it's important to note that projects like these are good for tourism and also for the residents who live here. 81% of Alaskans say they participate in outdoor recreation, which makes us the most active state in the United States for outdoor recreation. And an overwhelming number of Alaskans say that proximity to outdoor recreation is the reason they live here. There's demand for more projects like what you're about to learn about. These projects are good for the end result, but along the way, they also create jobs that will put Alaskans back to work, and in many cases, boost rural economies along the way. So I will turn this session over to my friend and colleague, Chris Beck, who will tell you all about what he's got up his sleeve.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Always the first test is, am I clever enough to hit share screen? And you'll, I hope, tell me if I've succeeded in that. Are you seeing my screen? Oh, good. Well, really pleased, Lee, that you're able to set up this meeting. The timing could not be better. And what we're hoping to cover is the accelerating progress. I think that's the way to describe it on this wonderful vision of a long trail. So I've got a little bit of intro information. And as you know, when I say a little bit, that means it's, about a 4-hour presentation squeezed into 30 seconds, actually like 7 or 8 minutes. And then, but much more interesting will be a couple of extra folks who've been willing to find time in this busy time of year. You can see the list there. Julie Saupe is Executive Director of Visit Anchorage, one of the places along the long trail. Debbie Speakman, similar position with the Kenai Peninsula Tourism Marketing Council. And as Debbie, I hope will share a little bit, she's the one person in this group who's actually hiked a long trail rather than just talked about how great they are. And then Alison, sort of up at the northern end of the long trail with the Division of Forestry, will talk about some of the interesting work in that area where there's an integration of recreation and forestry. So with that, I'm going to give a little bit of background on briefly, because a number of you probably have heard me talk about the Trails Initiative sufficiently frequently that you could easily do this job. But our mantra, our theme is we have these amazing outdoor recreation resources in Alaska, and we have really not tapped them. And because of that lack of investment, we could be doing things we're not doing. And you can see the list. It's near-term jobs. That's actually a focus of the general obligation bond that we'll be talking about in a second. And building opportunities. I was just talking with the woman who's at the Wasilla Park and Recreation lead, and she's really excited about the possibility of more Alaska-based small jobs, hotels, B&Bs, small guide services. But on down through the list, we do that, we get a stronger economy, more reasons for people to decide to be here, to stay here, make it easier for all of us to be a little more likely to get outside, be happy, be healthy. And then also it's really part of a broader effort to hang on to the things that we particularly love about Alaska that makes our place unique and different. So this, I'm going to read all these names slowly. I'm not a little attempt at humor there. This just gives you an idea of the breadth and depth of people who have been involved in all this. And this goes back to last year's work, what we had was a statewide trails investment strategy that in many ways was the unexpected starting point for the long trail. We ended up with a lot of individual trail projects. Just so you know that it's not only about the rail belt, I'm sharing one extract of that document, in this case down in Juneau. But with all the people on that previous slide, we ended up identifying a handful, about 50 high quality projects, including a series of individual projects between Seward and Fairbanks, which set the stage for maybe we should connect those projects and do this long trail. And this slide tries to summarize the things that make long trails so incredibly successful as both a way to have fun and a way to experience a place, and as economic drivers. And the thing that I keep hearing about, and it sounds a little cosmic perhaps, but this sort of magical power to attract use. And people are just excited by, even if they don't hike the whole trail, the chance to get out and be on a piece of it. So a couple of facts you can see there. The one that we might hear a little bit more about is the Camino de Santiago in Spain, but its growth continues to rise. And now, as the number shows, a bunch of folks hike it every year. A key point is that second bullet, the Appalachian Trail, where not that many people have found time and willingness to push as hard as you need to hike the whole thing. But every year, 3 million people hike a portion of the trail. And I hear about people hiking one piece this year and then another piece next year and incrementally doing it, or incrementally doing a piece in each state. John Muir Trail, just talking to friends in California, say it's not like it was back in the old days. It's just a steady growth, in part perhaps driven by the movie, the Cheryl Strayed book, and all the people who've since decided that they've got to get out there and wear out their boots as well. Along with that broader global popularity, you can see some information at the bottom, something I've shared every few hours for the last 2 years. If we can get just half the typical amount of visitors come to Alaska in a typical year to spend one more day, it's $137 million in extra spending. And then I also always have to talk about New Zealand, where they've made a lot of investments in these kinds of trails. And as a result, they have a much longer stay than is the case in Alaska, 19 versus Alaska's average of 9. So why this particular route? It's mostly on public land. It's close to communities, so that's good for the walkers, the hikers, the skiers, whatever, the bikers, the snow machiners. But it also means that it brings some economic benefits to the communities who serve those users. You can see the rest of the list there. Economic impact, manageable cost. It's much of this trail already exists. Much meaning maybe like a third. And it's a beautiful place. This little piece I'm going to point my cursor at is the braided section. And I think there'll turn out to be other places where that same multiple routes becomes what is the long trail. In that case, going down to Girdwood, there's people who would love to be biking from Seward to Fairbanks. And maybe we take advantage of the bike trails that lets people move through that area. There might be ways to go overland back through the Crow Pass area, or maybe getting into the details to the Arctic Valley to Indian route. Just talking with the folks up in the southern Matsuboro, there's a real interest in the possibility of some new branches on the west side of the Talkeetna Mountains, maybe through Wasilla. Maybe there's a bike route there. So it's evolving. It's not final. We're working with many partners to make it happen. So the unexpected and exciting news that's kept everybody on that previous list really busy is that the governor announced a $356 million infrastructure general obligation bond 3 weeks ago, a little less, and included, to our great pleasure, $13.2 million for a, as it says there, a Fairbanks to Seward multi-use recreation trail construction process. So we have been busy trying to secure that as part of the general obligation bond. And this is the overview of kind of where it is. So the theme that the governor and his staff have emphasized is this is a a jobs project. It's getting people back to work in Alaska, which I think we all know is an important goal. So the focus is on construction of shovel-ready projects. And in a second, I'll show the package that we've come up with. A little detail that seems obscure, but it's a reality, is the first bullet under approval of the legislature. Is the initial package was a set of projects that had actually come out of Alaska Trails last year's investment strategy document. But unfortunately, that original set of projects wasn't necessarily the right ones. It included some projects that are already funded. It included a big section of the 13.2 was the Mat-Su Visitor Center, a great project, but not really a trail. So we've been working with the Office of Management Budget, with the governor's staff, with the people in the Senate Transportation Committee to put in the right package that's actually the long trail package, which I'll share in 2 seconds. What's coming up as soon as tomorrow is the Senate Transportation Committee having a meeting where public testimony is permitted to get public views on the full $356 million package, including this 13.2. That will continue to where the most important actions are taken will be in the Finance and in the House, in the Senate and the House Finance Committee. After this happens, we'll be optimistic. After legislative approval, 120 days later, there's a public vote. So if folks on the call here on the Zoom and or your friends or your organizations feel like this is a good idea, support through that whole process will be necessary and appreciated. So there's a quick glance. I'm not going to do more than do a 20,000-foot flyover. I want to pass it on to these other speakers, but the projects that are included came from the partners along the length of the trail. Alaska Trails is the sponsor and convener of this, but we're more the pen than the voice. And so you can see the projects, a couple linking the last steps or the first steps, depending on if you're a north-south or south-north person, that take the long trail out of Fairbanks and into points south. Allison will talk about the next increment between the little community of Nenana and Fairbanks. And then there are a couple of projects in Denali Borough, great projects, really important project, Government Peak Recreation Area. Then in the Anchorage, greater Anchorage area, there's a downtown project connecting the coastal trail to Ship Creek. And then a project improving the somewhat deteriorating Crow Pass Eagle River Trail, a connection along Turnagain Arm, extending the Turnagain Arm Trail through Windy Corner and a big rocky cliff, and then the linkages, some gaps in the southern trek of the Iditarod. So what is the next step? How we might ask people to be involved is to check out the full package. It's on the Alaska Trails website. And we ask people to, if you have connections with a local legislator, let them know that you believe this is an important project. If in fact that's your view, particularly valuable will be connections to the finance committees in the Senate and House, and just help people understand what the project is about, the benefits it might bring. And then in addition, submitting statements of import is really helpful. And I don't think it's being cynical. I think it's valid and important to really emphasize the recreational side, but the economic benefits. I think that's what gets the most traction in this process. So I guess two examples. There's this Mat-Su Borough project I mentioned. There's some of the gaps in the bridges to be filled in the Anchorage to Seward section. The full package you can see is, as I mentioned, on Alaska Trails. And here's the contact information. With that, I'm going to go like this really fast and say, I'll be done. We'll take questions at the end, but let's go ahead and let Julie start to talk about some of the connections between all this and Anchorage. So I'm going to hit stop share. And Julie, it's yours.
Mine. Oh, okay. Thank you, Chris. And just to let everybody know a little bit about our organization, Visit Anchorage is the Convention and Visitors Bureau for South Central for the Anchorage area. And while we talk to visitors, we actually really are here to serve our residents. So we're the connection to while we serve our visitors to make sure that residents are getting the economic benefit and the quality of life benefits that visitors can bring to a community. So that's who Visit Anchorage is. And I've always said, and I think Lee referenced this, that if it's good for residents, it's good for the visitors, and certainly vice versa. So I think that framework is why this is really a kind of a compelling project for the visitor industry right now. In the past, research has indicated that travelers to Alaska were motivated and they planned their trip because of the possibility, the potential, the promise really to deliver mountains, glaciers, and wildlife. And these have been the top 3 motivators for many years. In fact, decades. I think those have been the top 3 motivators for travel to Alaska. And Chris will tell you, he often references that hiking from an activity standpoint, once visitors are here, hiking is the fastest growing activity that travelers to Alaska have been interested in. And to Lee's point about residents and visitors benefiting from many of the same infrastructure projects. And this is the perfect example, because while we're seeing visitors take advantage of the hiking activity that we offer in Alaska, we also know that residents are taking more advantage, at least here in Anchorage, particularly this past year through the pandemic. If you've been out in our parks and our trails, you know that residents are definitely out taking more advantage of these wonderful assets that we have in our community. So the increase in interest from visitors in visiting our trails and exploring our trails, I think has to do both with changing demographics of our travelers, as well as access to our trails and the emphasis of trails within Alaska's communities. Nationally and pre-pandemic, you may have heard or read about the surging interest in national parks, and that goes hand in hand with an increased interest in trails and the changing demographic that we're seeing. We're seeing younger, more independent travelers, also travelers who are looking for a deeper experience, whether it's a deeper cultural experience or a deeper natural experience. So the most recent research, and I'm not sure how to frame this, I'm going to call it mid-pandemic. I hope it's more towards the end of the pandemic, but current research right here where we are right now from destination analysts suggests that all US travelers right now are most motivated by scenic beauty, open spaces, and parklands. So that's not just motivated Alaska travelers, that's the state of the American traveler right now: scenic beauty, open spaces, and parklands. And as you recall, that's just only slightly different from the traveler who's motivated to come to Alaska. So these are lining up very well for Alaska right now. And I expect that this interest will maintain traction when we're post-pandemic. People who are prioritizing travel this year after lockdown, of course, are thinking of open spaces, but it's a trend that we started seeing even before the year that we've experienced since the pandemic has hit. So I do believe that this traction will continue. There's an increasing expectation that even after the pandemic, travelers from the US who previously would have gone international, they will continue to also look at domestic trips. And this also bodes very well for Alaska because we're still domestic, but we're fairly exotic to a lot of the US travelers. Not only that, but they're more adventuresome. And so for a trail project, this is the type of traveler, the more independent traveler, that would line up very well for hiking activities, outdoor activities that would benefit from this type of project. And I've used the term a couple of times now, the independent traveler. And you've likely read a lot recently about an increased emphasis on the independent travelers due to the lack of cruise ships coming last year and this year. But I don't want you to think that this is a short-lived market that we're just reaching out to because of the discouraging situation that we find ourselves in right now. In South Central Alaska, in Mat-Su, in Fairbanks, and I'm sure Debbie can talk about the Kenai Peninsula. The independent travelers have been critical to our year-round visitation, and they continue to grow as a critical year-round traveler for us. So this project feeds into this important and growing demographic perfectly. So I want to talk a little specifically about the unique opportunity of this statewide bond package in supporting trails. And as I hope most of you have experienced firsthand, we certainly in Anchorage have an amazing trail system that meets all levels of fitness, all levels of terrain. And like many other communities, we can easily defend the claim that we have world-class hiking here. There's no question about that. World-class trails, whether it's hiking or biking. However, the destinations that have really been able to capitalize on hiking and on trail systems, where hiking is not just an activity once you reach a destination, but actually is the motivator for travel to that destination, are really places where hiking and trails pass over multiple communities. New Zealand's a great example. That was actually a national priority. It wasn't just one community. It wasn't just Auckland or Christchurch or one community with a great trail system. It was a priority that went across many jurisdictions. And so that's why this is really a unique or a new opportunity for Alaska to prioritize trails across jurisdictions, to have a long trail that is known by name outside of our borders. Pacific Crest Trail is a great example. I've gone down to do just sections of that, as Chris was talking about. Even if people are not going to do the whole long trail, it does generate definite marketability to be able to say that you've even done a piece of it. And so by using a statewide bond, I think this project will lift Alaska's trails to a multi-community level. And importantly, it will also provide Alaska's residents new trails to explore and help redistribute traffic among well-loved trails right now. So I'll just end by saying, by serving visitors, the benefit will come to residents, just as Lee said. And as Chris says, one more day, one more night, one more activity, all of that provides economic benefit to Alaska. And I think this could be a project that really helps communities all up and down the rail belt and beyond. So I'll end right there and turn it back to Chris or Lee.
Sure. That was super exciting and helpful. The facts you're sharing are encouraging. And so thank you for doing that. Maybe we'll just go ahead and roll through to our next speaker, to Debbie. And then maybe right there we'll pause because we'll be switching gears a little bit when Alison does her presentation. So Debbie, the whatever the metaphorical version of the microphone is yours.
Yes. And do you see my screen?
Nice glacier shot.
Okay, excellent. And I'm trying to, if this is the right view, but
I think that looks good, I would say.
Okay, good. Good afternoon. I'm Debbie Speakman. I'm the Executive Director of the Kenai Peninsula Tourism Marketing Council, but most widely known by our trademark, which is Alaska Playground. So it's something we like to brag about, and it's something that's been really great as a promotion. Our organization started in 1994 as a partnership with the Kenai Peninsula Borough to promote visitation. And our mission is pretty great. It's to promote, develop, and coordinate visitation to the Kenai Peninsula and create an awareness and understanding of tourism's effect on and enhancement of the local economy and residents' quality of life. I know a lot of times people will think that municipalities are investing in infrastructure just to promote tourism. But like Julie said, while we talk to visitors, the great benefit is that residents are the ones who reap the long-term and year-round benefits. Woo, that's fun. So the Kenai Peninsula, being Alaska's playground, the majority of our visitors are actually Alaskans. And we definitely saw this over the last year. And it was really fun because we saw a lot of Alaskans who had not been south of Anchorage and ones that returned. And we were happy to welcome those folks. And as Julie mentioned, the age groups used to be the newlyweds and nearly deads who came to Alaska. And I think part of it is the infrastructure investments that businesses have done in the state, but it's also, we do have a more active group. And, 65-year-olds, those used to be the nearly deads, but it's a very young and active demographic. And we rely a lot on analytics. And for those people in Alaska who are coming to the Kenai Peninsula, I've got some bullet points there. And I love the big brother in marketing, because when you get to my website, we're able to, through the magic of the internet, look at your behaviors. So people who come to my website also have interest in food and dining, which if you've been to the Kenai Peninsula, it's something we're very good at. They are outdoor enthusiasts. And this one's fun, bank and finance, which means they can afford to support us. And then these are travel buffs. And for our travel trends, we are seeing a big transition from people staying in hotels, motels, and inns into vacation rentals, to lodges, campgrounds, and tiny homes and things like that. I know that the fishing charters have definitely decreased. A lot of those people are retiring, and we all know that fish numbers are not what they used to be. These travelers, while they're saving money on their lodging, they are spending money on experiences. And what I find really fun about Alaska is there is a lot of low cost or free opportunities for recreation, but then we do have businesses that are offering a more expanded, adventurous experience. So our active travelers are seeking adventure. They're seeking a variety of options. And the multi-generational groups, those are those active 65-year-old plus that are bringing their families along with them. So for the Kenai Peninsula, you can see that attracting our visitors, I think access is something that really saved our 2020. But friends and family are a huge demographic that visits us. And whenever we're at conferences or talking to people across the state, we like to remind them, bring their friends, bring their family, and enjoy a fairly accessible part of Alaska. And Chris has also mentioned one more day. We always shout that. So the average visitor spends $198 per person per day while in Alaska. So even if we are providing more low cost opportunities, they're still here spending money. So long trails and sustainable tourism, you look at the Camino, and this one's been going on for a few thousand years, so it's pretty developed. And I was able to go on that in 2017, and it inspired me as I was thinking about Kachemak Bay Water Trail. And I'll touch base on that a little bit later. But you look at all these other long trails, and what is really great for business and investment and employment is that trail towns pop up. Through hikers need a lot of services, everything from showers to dropping off supplies, medical, lots of opportunity besides just maintaining those trails and creating those trails. So look, it's me. Inset there is I have the Kachemak Bay Water Trail, and I emailed Chris yesterday about this. So it's 125-mile paddle from the Homer Spit all the way to the head of Kachemak Bay to Seldovia. That hasn't been done a lot of marketing recently. Volunteers who put it together did a phenomenal job. but it's something with minimum maintenance and investment will go on into perpetuity and continue to draw people to Homer, and that's kayak rentals, repairs, medical. So my experience on the Camino de Santiago, 700 kilometers over 37 days, and it was incredible. And walking along, I went through forested, really remote areas, went through cities, and what really, impressed me is how well that has been built up. Now, thousands of years, over 300,000 people a year do it, but we're really spread out. There were days when I would see few people, or then it was over the Easter holiday, so then there would be hundreds of people. But it's a great opportunity for small communities to have that revenue source. That again will go on as the trail is developed and little towns and services are developed. And I really wanted to put a picture of my feet at the end of this walk, but it's a little intense. But I'm excited to be a part of this. I know that for the Kenai Peninsula, quality of life for residents who we really enjoy being outside on the trails is something that we would continue to do, and again, do parts over the years and supporting it. And that is what I have today. And again, thank you for letting me join in on this call.
Well, thanks much, Debbie. I'm envious of you having done that walk. I've seen pictures of it. And so I think, we're doing good on time. Maybe let's pause before Alison talks more specifically about the section of the Long Trail she's most familiar with, and see if any of you good folks who are participating have questions for really any of the folks who've questions or thoughts, opinions on the things that Julie or Debbie shared, or maybe some of the starting material that I shared. Anybody brave enough to unmute and ask a question? And Lee, obviously you jump in and do the same.
Hey, Chris, yeah, we've got a question from the audience about whether there is an expected completion date for the project.
That is a valid question, and others have asked, and I give what sounds like sort of I've become a politician in a slightly evasive answer, so I apologize up front. The 2025 will be the 100-year anniversary of the Appalachian Trail, and I've been starting to follow the process that they're involved in. They're still making progress on certain sections of the trail, acquiring land, securing easements. We've been telling people that we're not that patient here in Alaska. 100 years is way too long. And I think the advantage in Alaska is we start with a lot of public land. The vast majority of this trail is on public land. That was not the case with the Appalachian. So we are boldly claiming that there'll be a workable route in the next 5 to 10 years. And that, though, in the core of the answer to the question is it's a function of the support that we are able to generate at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. And we've got, with this $13.2 million, an unprecedented sum of funds going to fill gaps and do new sections of the trail. And I guess turning it back to the group, your involvement, your interest in supporting this, getting this through the legislature, getting it in front of the public and then supported there, will be the determinant of the answer. But this 13.2 is, I think I've checked, and this is a true statement, that it is more than the state of Alaska has invested in backcountry trails since statehood by like a factor of 10. And we've been working at the $100,000 level, and now we're certainly talking about millions. So great question, and it's sort of turning it around, and we'll need your help, and we can do it more quickly than was the 100 years or the thousands of years that Debbie described for the Camino.
Chris, one other question from our attendees is the Long Trail a name that's going to stick, or is there going to be something else? They point out that there's a Long Trail in Vermont, and to avoid confusion, I wonder if there's a thought about a new name.
Others have made that same point, and I don't think anybody feels like Alaska Long Trail is particularly brilliant label for this. I guess right now, if anybody has a good idea, please submit them. Send them in to myself or Mariam or Steve Cleary. And we've joked around, half joking, maybe we should do a contest. We need a better name. And maybe this is a place where people who have such experience in the world of branding and attraction generation, we talked further with people like Julie and Debbie, and come up with something that's worthy of this project. So I would, a long answer to, I think Long Trail is kind of the de facto placeholder for the moment. And we're open to hearing better names. If there aren't other questions, I might ask one back to Debbie and Julie. And there's a bunch of things you said that to me are exciting and interesting. I'm wondering what trends you're seeing and what advice we might have for all of us about extending the season of visitation and growing. Like this time of year can be a particularly beautiful time in Alaska. Debbie, you were describing before we got onto the team how beautiful the weekend was down in Homer. And I know how beautiful it was up in Talkeetna. Any thoughts about someplace between infrastructure and marketing, all the things you do that will maybe grow the season beyond the traditional 100, 110 days?
Yeah, I'll just speak from Anchorage. The season really has been expanding slowly for many years. When I first started, it was definitely mid-May through mid-September. And now our summer season really starts in April and goes well beyond September into October. And that's what's considered summer season now. Beyond that, our shoulder season, so early spring, starting this time of year, starting really with the start of for rendezvous each year and continuing even into November now. This more adventuresome traveler, we're seeing them in the shoulder seasons. I think Iceland did many of us northern destinations a great favor by their intense marketing and making people not so fearful of a cold weather vacation. And I think that we're seeing the benefit of that, as well as the interest in the Northern Lights that Iceland also and Fairbanks has done a good job in generating. Right now, we have more product than ever. It used to be a chicken and an egg problem for Anchorage, quite honestly. We had a lot of places that would close down, say mid-September. And now we have more tour operators who are operating year-round, not just shoulder season, not just during Rondi, and finding a lot of success by offering dog mushing, by offering flight seeing. It's a great activity in the winter, and by offering Northern Lights photo tours all winter long from Anchorage. And so the chicken and egg problem has gone away a bit in that we have product that we can offer, and every year we're seeing shoulder and winter season expand, and I think we'll just continue to see that.
Thanks. Debbie, you want to add in?
Yeah, so on the Kenai Peninsula, which if you can hear the waves in the background, I'm here on the spit. I like to rub that in. Something that we have seen a lot of, and in that growing demographic of 24 to 35-year-olds, is they are on social media. They are seeing all these experiences, and they're taking things. We've had a lot of surfers this year, and there is a company, a small boat that takes people around to the small islands around this area to surf. So there's, again, chicken and the egg. There's just more product, and we're reaching a larger swath of people for a lesser amount of money through social media, and there's more opportunities, and they're seeing more experiences. And again, for us, Alaskans are keeping us on the shoulder season going, and it behooves us to just really show off the product. But we do have a lot of businesses that shut down here in the winter. but we are seeing with warming temperatures, businesses here on the Spit were open until October, where in previous years, I mean, boards were up Monday of Labor Day. So
Yeah.
warming temperatures and additional experiences have really been key to expanding.
I like the idea of Homer as a surf destination. Well, Alison, why don't you take and talk to us about the exciting things going on up north of where I'm sitting.
Okay, let me share my thing here. Oops. Okay. And I want to switch my, you guys are probably seeing, oh, now it's behind that.
We're seeing in the presenter mode.
Presenter
And when
view,
we did
yeah.
the prep, you were able to switch it into, was it off display
Oh, here we
setting?
go. Display setting, here we go. I can just swap it now with my little, okay, there we go.
Perfect.
So, okay, and thanks, Chris, for helping me do this PowerPoint, so I could present it. So a couple of things that I just wanted to start off with right away, exciting from what we've just been hearing, is the whole idea of Alaska having more public land than the Appalachian Trail. And so that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today, is working landscapes in Tanana Valley State Forest. So that's public land that we're talking about, integrating resource development and outdoor recreation. And then the other thing I'll get into is that seasonal nature that we can really work on all year round in this area. So I'm with Division of Forestry in the Department of Natural Resources, and it's been really fun to partner with lots of different folks in this group. So this is the Tanana Valley, this outline here, and then within it, the little black shapes is the Tanana Valley State Forest. And they're in total, so it goes all the way from Nenana and Fairbanks here all the way down to Tok, but we're going to be talking about this little red outline section here. 1.8 million acres total in the state forest. Its primary use is commercial forestry, legislatively designated for that, but recreation isn't allowed, and a very important secondary use. It's already used quite a lot. So we're going to talk about working landscapes in this sense, and what I mean by that is this is an area that is commercial timber sales are sold and very frequently for both for commercial timber, for local manufacture, and also for firewood and that kind of thing. So the idea is, how do we maximize the public value of the state forest? How do we benefit timber harvest at the same time we're supporting and improving our outdoor recreation opportunities? You can see here some bikers and snow machiners. Chris's slide was similar, but the other really cool thing about the Tanana Valley State Forest and the opportunities that it has there is that, first of all, when you do a timber harvest, you have to build a road. And so that automatically gives you access into this area that might not have been available for access, easy access before. And the other thing is that it's not just for timber harvest. It can be maintained and used in the long term, not only for hiking or mountain biking, but also for snow machining. These are multi-use roads, and by statute, the state forest land is open to multiple uses. So this provides opportunities for motorized and non-motorized. So there's lots of places in the United States and elsewhere that they've been doing these partnerships between forestry and recreation. And Bend, Oregon is, this is Chris's slide, and some of you probably have seen it a lot. It's really cool. This map here shows that there's timber harvest that's occurring all over the place in this area, but there's mountain biking trails all through it. So there's places you mountain bike that have just been harvested, and there's places that are closed to mountain biking because of active timber harvest at that time. But overall, it's a really popular destination for mountain bikers because there's lots of roads and trails that create great access. Not only in the lower 48, but also worldwide, there's opportunities like this. Nelson, New Zealand is one example. You can see here these areas that have been harvested recently, areas that haven't, but throughout the whole thing are mountain bike trails, also timber roads, right? So I've never been there, Chris has, I'd love to go someday, but anyway, another opportunity to take advantage of that access that's provided by forestry and use it for recreation. So as part of, this whole thing started with a relatively small project. It was kind of this pilot project between recreation and forestry, a partnership in the Rosie Creek area of Tanana Valley State Forest. And it's relatively close to Fairbanks. If you see on this little map, this is the panel that will go in the kiosk that's right here on the Parks Highway, where we're building, taking a gravel pit and making it into a nice trailhead parking lot that will work for both motorized and non-motorized folks. So within this Rosie Creek unit of the Tanana Forest, there's all these yellow lines are the forestry roads that already exist. The blue ones are winter-only trails. And so what we did was get a $100,000 recreational trails program grant. And we talked to the locals in Fairbanks in this area about what they wanted. And what they wanted was, first of all, they wanted to maintain the roads so that they could be used easily for recreation. Because when you do a timber harvest, the forestry isn't in there every year maintaining the roads unless there's active timber harvest there. So locals said, we want you to maintain the roads so that they're really good for recreation. And we also want signage. We want to know where we're going because we get lost in there. There's this sort of network of forestry roads. It's hard to tell where we're going. So, so this was really, this panel that we're just finishing developing it will go up there. It explains not only the different, so this is all state forest in here. These are some different land ownerships, different rules of the rules of the road, I guess, on these different land ownerships. And then as well as some kind of cool interpretive stuff where this dotted line here is the Rosie Creek Fire outline. And then within it, the green spots are reforestation of native species. And then there's also some non-native species plots. So kind of a cool mini interpretive panel, but then also upgrades to timber roads, and really an opportunity to inform the public about the benefits that forestry can bring to not just commercial timber harvesters, but also to the public. So it's an exciting partnership that's actually happening. The roads will be maintained this summer. They'll be and the parking lot formed. So then in terms of the whole big project, what I was just talking about is kind of on this end, this eastern end, is the Rosie Creek. This is the Rosie Creek area in here. But the whole segment, this northern segment of the Alaska Long Trail, or whatever better name you come up with, which is a great idea. So this shows that whole route all the way from Fairbanks to Nenana. And I have a better slide that shows it more closely, but you can see the black lines here are existing forestry roads. And the red lines are trails that would connect them. So this is the other really cool thing, is because there's already a lot of roads in this area, it's a lot of bang for our buck to connect these roads to go all the way to, to make this whole segment. So what we're looking at is basically maintaining or, improving the forestry roads through the Tanana Valley State Forest. There's 35 miles that will connect. Those are those black lines. And then we'd need 18 miles of new trail linkages that connect those existing logging roads. So basically we're connecting for the Alaska Long Trail, but we're also creating some really cool opportunities for day trippers, whether they're coming from Nenana or Fairbanks or Kenai or Alaska. And it's just giving visitors more reasons to spend time and money in that Fairbanks area. Oh, and speaking of which, these areas are great for not only summertime use, and these are all upland roads. You can see they're kind of at the top of the ridges, so they're not going to be swampy. But it's great. They're used now for snow machining and dog mushing and that kind of thing too. So just probably more cool opportunities for dog mushing. People that have those setups for tourism and things like that, and snow machining and that sort of thing. So, this map just shows a little bit more clearly the black lines that are forestry roads that already exist that would need some upgrades and maintaining. The thin ones are relatively new forestry roads that are still in good shape. So the dark ones would probably need a little bit of maintenance. And then the red lines are those trails. And then right in here, this little section here is that Rosie Creek area that I showed you more of. This dotted line here is where we'd like to build a trail, even though it doubles up with some forestry road already. But this is on the north side of the ridge, so it's not as pretty. If we could get the funding, the initial funding to make this little trail route here, it'd be extra cool and beautiful. But you know, we're good just to connect it. So this is project details. I'm not going to go through it all. Again, 18 miles of the 7-foot wide multi-use trails, and then brushing out the bigger roads. There, we want to do a map kiosk and directional signs, one bridge, and then the environmental review. I can give you more stuff on that later. And then just a brief summary of some of the support that we've already had. This was specifically for the Rosie Creek project that we had letters of support. The borough and a couple different citizens advisory committees, the Board of Forestry, and again, when like I said, we had a public meeting in Fairbanks and we had 40 people come and everybody was in favor, which is, I've never been to a public meeting like that. So that was pretty fun and exciting. So that, unless it's somebody wants to look at any of these maps, again, I'll stop sharing and people can ask questions.
Thanks very much, Alison. And Alison is entirely the hero of this process, because while the summary, when it's all done, makes it look relatively straightforward, the reality is, most any of you know, doing anything in Alaska with public lands and neighbors and budgets is complicated. So when we start erecting statues to the heroes, Alison will be prominently among that group. So we're looking at about 4 or 5 minutes left with Lee, a little bit of a final wrap up. I know one question came in, which I want to answer quickly, and then others for Alison. Eric had asked about camping along the trail, and it's a great example of something we know is a goal. And in fact, the possibility of cabins along the trail, or even more modest lean-to shelters, seem like they add a whole lot of value. And we just haven't got far enough down the path to figure out exactly how we incorporate that, but are wholly open to it. And when I say we, it makes it sound like there's some lofty group that's off deciding all this stuff. It is really a collaborative effort. So if all of you have ideas, want to share your thinking, want to get involved, maybe that's the headline from the whole discussion here is, please jump in. We'd love to have your ideas. Eric, you have a thought?
No.
Huts and shelters are magic in Alaska. As much fun as it is to put your tent up in the snow, I'd rather do it, on a platform with a shelter overhead. So, but let's give other people a chance if there were questions for Alison before we pass it back to Lee. And I think we probably wrap up here in the next 5 minutes.
Hey, Chris, this is a question, I think, not directly at Alison, but for the whole trail project. So is there any planning to educate potential users of these trails about natural resources development and climate change? What kind of messaging might there be along the trail?
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting to hear both Debbie and Julie talk about the changing season for tourism in Alaska. And I think anybody who's lived here any length of time knows that Alaska is a different place than it was 10 or 20 years ago. You don't have to be here 10 or 20 years ago to see those changes. So I think both from a pragmatic point of view of just making sure people understand the weather, understand it's changing, understand the opportunities and the challenges, and some safety issues, particularly if you're traveling different times a year, that we'll owe it to people as they start using the trail to make that point. And then I think maybe the second half of the question is, really, I'm going to slightly expand it. One of the things that we want to do through this whole Trails Initiative process and the Long Trail is promote stewardship. New Zealand is an amazing place, but it's an example of a landscape that's been dramatically altered by human activity. And I think Alaska is unique in its intact ecosystems. I think we want to be telling that story, emphasizing the value intact ecosystems bring to Alaska and being good stewards. So it's a great question. And I think we want to educate for safety, educate for stewardship, educate for just enjoyment. So thanks for asking, River.
And just to add to that, one of the main things about when we had considered support from the Board of Forestry and from the Citizens Advisory Committee of the Tanana Valley State Forest, that's always on the top of their list, is just make people really aware that this is a state forest, that there will be times when those trails are going to be closed, or when people have to be, very aware of, logging trucks on this area. So that's been a huge push for us in terms of using those, doing those partnerships, is like the map showed for the Bend, Oregon site. There's going to be times when where that's going to take precedence, where timber harvest is going to take precedence, and that just needs to be stated so that everybody can see there's benefits for them for timber harvest, but there's also going to be times when they're going to have to watch out.
One quick question I have, Allison, it's not a question, it's a comment though, after hearing what you had to say, was that, projects like Rosie Creek bring me to Fairbanks. I think we have to factor in, and we've seen through the pandemic, that there is a lot of this state for our own residents to explore, and giving them reasons to even go. That in-state traveler is really valuable, and sometimes they're just off grid because we don't have those access points and resources. But when you create a system like you're doing at Rosie Creek, it's a lure, and it gets us up there. So thanks for that work. I'm excited to get up there and ride and hike that area.
Yeah. Now there's going to be trail signs, so you won't get lost. It's going to be super.
Bonus.
So
Oh, Chris, did you have any, we're about out of time. I wanted to give you a chance to wrap up before I do my
other than just to say thanks. The slide that I shared with all the names on it, despite me often being the most talkative person in the room, the only reason all this is moving forward is a whole bunch of people. Eric is a good example. Other people on this call, likewise, just keep stepping forward to help us get the right projects identified at this point, help us work this through the legislature. So thank you to all of you doing that. And then to Debbie and Julie and Allison, I know all of you have a million things going on. So everything you shared was inspiring, helpful. And I look forward to all of us sort of building to the glorious future that Alaska has in front of it. So thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you, Chris, and thanks to Allison, Debbie, and Julie as well. Chris, as I always know you, I can count on you. You've put together a very meaty session on a great topic. It's really ignited people's imaginations and inspired people to take action to join you on this quest to create this first kind of long trail that connects our communities. So again, thanks to everyone for participating in these lunch and learns. I would say that please, if you have ideas for future sessions, I'm open to hearing those. Our next few sessions include next week with the Anchorage Outdoor School, and we're talking about connecting kids and nature in general and not just about the school. And then on the 24th, we'll be filling you in on all the details about the Anchorage Parks Bond and what's in that package this year to fire up the voter base to get out and turn out at the polls for that issue. And then finally, the last Wednesday of this month, we'll be talking about what's going on in the world of making Alaska more bike and pedestrian friendly in our Transforming Transportation session. So we've got all of March lined up, but if you have sessions and things you want to talk about, whether it's projects or issues or whatever, you're welcome to contact me and shoot me those ideas. But thanks again for participating today, and get out there and play.
Yeah. So Lee, where will people find a copy of this that you referenced you've been recording?
Once it's ready, it'll be on the Alaska Outdoor Alliance YouTube channel. And then we will give notice of that on our Facebook page, and probably the next time we send out an email newsblast.
Great. Well, thank you, Lee, for keeping all this going forward. This is a valuable session, so appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Go team. Thanks, everyone.
Go team.